my name's Gurpreet, also known as GP. Some people call me Turbinator. I'm the VP of Interope Solutions at LK. This is going to be a great session, guys. So people on the outside, if you are not in here, you should get in here because we've got some of the most amazing speakers over here that are going to be sharing a lot of things. So everybody take your phone out. You see the QR code? We're going to do some interactive session over here. Let's get you all on the QR code. Go scan the QR code really quick. Everybody, I'm watching you. All the people that have the phone in your pocket, I'm seeing you. You need to all participate. Get your phone out. All the people that are walking in, get your phone out and scan the QR code. We're going to do some interactive stuff. And I'll know how many people are actually participating by the number of answers we're getting. And then all the people that don't participate, we're going to focus on you. All right. Sorry, you'll have to excuse me. I'm going to be doing my dad jokes. All right, so that's part of the deal. All right, everybody scan. Do you guys see it? David, let's go with the first question. This is just to get you warmed up. Hopefully it gets you excited by that question. We're asking you a question. Depends on what do you want to drink tonight?
Portuguese red wine.
We'll ask the panelists too, all right? What's your answer? Abhi, what do you like?
Red wine.
Red wine. Emmanuelle?
Red or bubbly, depending.
Awesome. You could see that we've got those numbers going. Is everybody done? Wow, the numbers are moving up. We're tied.
Ooh.
Anything but wine, okay? That's there's a bunch of people over here that go anything but wine. All right, so we're done with that. That was a good warm-up, right? Everybody got interested. Keep the phone away. Don't let the phone go away. Can we just go to the results pack again, just so that everybody take a look at the results? Is that possible? So red wine wins at 29%. Everybody that said red, go clap right now. All right, let's move to the next question. Sorry. This is a more serious question. How long would it take you to access all of your own entire personal medical record? Emmanuelle had posted something on LinkedIn, and that's where this question came up in our... Anything but wine? Why is that in there, guys? What happened with that? 41% say, forget about the record, we'll have something else. I don't know why that question went on the poll. I don't know. That's...
4 weeks.
Okay, but we see something, right, in terms of a trend. And we're going to talk a little bit about this trend, right, because that's what interoperability is supposed to solve. So 70% say 2 to 4 weeks, at least, right? More,
Yeah.
right?
More.
Probably more.
Yeah.
I know one of the panelists said, well, I'll have to take some paid time off or unpaid time off to be able to kind of do that, right? So, so that's a pretty stark, view of how things are, right? And so let's move on to the last question. See, that's what we wanted to do, get everybody to participate together. In an ideal world in healthcare, which of the following problems would you want to see solved first? Everything needs to be solved, but which one first? How would you prioritize that? Not seeing any numbers out there. Okay. Awesome. So it's really interesting. We're seeing this improvement of care coordination across the entire care continuum, right? Number one, improving patient or provider access to patient data at the point of care. All right, so those are really interesting answers over there, I think. Thank you, everybody, for participating in that. The way we're going to do this session, before I introduce or have our panelists introduce themselves, this is going to be a a casual fireside chat type of a conversation. For the panelists, if you agree or disagree with each other, don't wait for me to cue you. The more you disagree, the TRP goes up. No, I'm just joking. But in that sense, why don't we start with the introductions over here? Let's start with our lady on the panel over here first.
Thank you so much, merci. Donc, je suis Emmanuelle Lamoureux, je suis directrice générale pour les stratégies de soins de santé à Santé Canada. And I'll be speaking mostly English, just to make sure we have good interaction in the panel. But if you have any questions in French, we're happy to answer them in that language as well. And I'm the one who said I'd have to take leave without pay if I were to gather all of my healthcare data, because I've moved quite a bit. I've lived in several countries, several provinces as well, and the more mobile you are, I think the more complicated it becomes to have access to all of your data. Unless you've been a very organized, person and have managed to keep it all in one place. If that is your case, well, lucky you. I'm in terms of what I do at Health Canada, because I realize my title probably doesn't say much, DG for healthcare strategies. We are among, several responsibilities. We are in charge of digital health and health data, the policy around it. So I have the pleasure of working regularly with my colleagues at chez and Infoway on those issues, and I'm quite convinced that modernizing our health systems through health data and digital tools can make a big difference in terms of access and quality of care. So I'll leave it here maybe. I want to make sure we have time for interaction.
No, absolutely. Thank you for doing that. And Abhi, if you can introduce yourself and what your charter is within the organization that you serve.
Thank you, GP. And I think you're playing the job of Turbinator. Yes, very well. First of all, regrets. My CEO, Michael Green, couldn't be here. He had an accident yesterday, so I'm filling in his shoes. Hopefully, I can do as good a job as he would have done, so bear with me. My name is Abhi Kalra. I lead our digital health interoperability practice at Canada Health Infoway. And I've had the privilege of leading this team since 2020, and together with my Infoway colleagues, some of them who are here, we're all passionate about improving our health system. We're all passionate about, advancing the connected care. When you look at some of the polls there, the top one was improving the care collaboration, through the care continuum. At the heart of that is really connected care. We have moved, from a traditional pen and paper health system to a digitized system, and digitization is still underway. And now from digitization, we're going to a data-based connected care system. So that transition is very important. It took us, almost a decade and a half to move from the traditional health system to a digitized. Now, I don't think we should be taking another decade to make sure that we have a database connected healthcare system, which is why I think, and that is our mandate. That is Canada Health Infoway's mandate. So working closely with our federal, provincial, territorial, and our fellow PCHO partners to put together a robust, I would call a pan-Canadian shared roadmap, which really highlights the common problems that actually connect all of us. And how do we actually solve those problems? So we're not going to give solutions to everyone, but we're going to work together on those solutions. And that's really the intent and the gist of that shared roadmap. So I'm very happy, to be here, and thank you to the organizers to get us here. And we'll cover a lot more about our mandate through the Q&A.
Thank you, Abhi. Last but not the least, Dave.
Thanks, My name is David O'Toole. I'm the President and CEO of the Canadian Institute for Health Information, or CIHI, as it's known. We hold most of the health information across the country that comes out of the hospital systems. So if you've ever been in a hospital, we're holding your data. We also have extensive holdings of information with respect to health workforce, long-term care, some aspects of community care, mental health delivery. And we use this information. We're deemed by all the provinces and the federal government to be a prescribed entity, which means we can hold that information and it can be used for policy making and program design across the country without individual consent. So we hold kind of a rarefied status with respect to the privacy community across the country and the legislation. We report publicly on comparative aspects of quality and safety with respect to the delivery of healthcare across the country, and you can see that on our website. You can go in and see what your mom's long-term care facility, how it's ranking in pressure ulcers or falls or care generally, how your local or regional hospital is faring. So we were set up 30 years ago, and we're now in the process of reimagining what we need to be as a organization that was created in an analog age, and how we need to transform ourselves to be relevant and enabler of the sorts of change that you've been talking about here today and tomorrow, and that Abhi and Emmanuelle have been talking about. How do we prepare to enable the innovations that you folks are engaging in, either policy innovations, delivery, healthcare delivery innovations, technical innovations coming out of private sector firms? So how do we take analog organizations and make them relevant in a digital age? That's partly what we're up here talking about.
Wonderful, thank you. Let's get directly to the heart of it, right? What does interoperability and data connectivity mean for you personally and from your organization's perspective? Who wants to go first?
Okay. Do you want me to go first?
All right, sure, there we go.
Yeah, I think to me, interoperability means me and my loved ones, could get the care when they need. And I'll give an example. I've shared this with some of the folks in private. I had to take my mother to an emergency room in November last year. She developed some serious infection, and she was nearly unconscious when I had to actually take her to the hospital. And at that time of the triage nurse, the frontline staff, had I not been there, there is no way for the triage nurse to even identify what medication she's on, what allergy she has, which she has tons of, and what her medical history, how many surgeries she had in the past. The sad part is all of that information is there in the system. It's not that the information is not there, it's all there. So in this case, it was a lucky encounter. I was there, so I was able to describe the full situation, and triage nurse could appropriately, put her into the right hospital room and get the treatment started. But to me, that is so. Even Dr. Affleck in Alberta, who ran an independent, work and be part of the expert advisor group, he said it very nicely. He said, interoperability saves lives, data saves lives, and that's the age we're in. So to me, I think I would rather talk about the purpose, like why do we need it? Because people sometimes think, interoperability is another technology jargon, we're coming up with new infrastructure, investment, everything. But it is actually related to care, it is related to safety, it is related to the clinician's ability to provide timely and safe care to the citizens. It is about enabling the health system and the administrators and the decision makers to make the right decisions because they have the right information available to them.
Thank you. Happy to go next. No, thanks for getting us started, Abhi. So similar answer, but I'll take it, I would say, like by groups. So yes, it means that I or you, as a patient has access to comprehensive health information, hopefully in a way that is easy to access, fast access, so that, we as patients are empowered to, be involved in our own health. It means that providers, we were talking earlier about the importance of team-based care. Well, for team-based care to work, information has to circulate between the care settings. Otherwise, you have gaps in information. So making sure that all of the professionals who are involved in the patient's care get the information they need when they need it. And then it also means, what we call, not to use jargon, but secondary use. So what Abhi was referring to earlier, decision makers, innovators, researchers, all the people who are responsible for improving our system. So yes, there's the direct care, and yes, data saves lives, absolutely. But when our system is inefficient, when tests are repeated over and over again because information gets lost in the process, and we have no way of fixing it because the people who actually are responsible for changing and improving the system don't have access to that data. It doesn't need to be personalized data. It doesn't need to be identified data. I don't need to know that, Joe Blow has cancer, but I do need to know that, the rate of cancer among Canadians has doubled over the last year. So when this information is not available, we are not in a position to improve our healthcare system. And this costs money, it costs time, it costs lives, to be honest. It has a cost in health. David.
Yeah, well, we're all going to aggressively agree with each other because we've all been part of this conversation. I just think one aspect of the interoperability would be the principle of collect once and use for these different purposes. It should be used to improve the quality and safety of care and healthcare outcomes at the patient level. It should improve the patient's ability to understand their own healthcare record and their healthcare information. It should improve the ability of policymakers to use that information for program design and policy purposes. And it should be used to reduce the administrative burden on the service provider and improve the lot of the caregiver as well. So it's the collection and assemblage of that information once in a fluid fashion and a secure fashion that can then be used multiple ways, as opposed to what we've got now, which is a nightmare.
Yeah, and it's interesting because my wife's a primary care provider, and she talks about, how patient data isn't available, at the point of care, right? And you guys, I think, bring up 3 really important points: access to data for patients, physician burnout, and handling that because the efficiencies in the physician workflow, and then the third thing you're talking about is the cost of care, right? So my question is, why hasn't it happened so far? Right. So what are the challenges? Where are the blocks? David, we'll start with you.
Well, the same guy who talks about interoperability saving lives has also coined the phrase, this is Ewan, that it's not technical interoperability. We can fix that. It's human interoperability. It's just to be not to be glib about it, but if you take a look now at the patient journey through a crisis, if you have to be brought into the hospital, and then you've got to be sent for a number of different tests or diagnostic interventions. The custodial responsibility for what happens to that information in each of those interventions is fragmented. There's the hospital itself, which is holding some information. There's the diagnostic process you're going to go through, and that's holding that information in the form of an MRI or something. So we have a custodial model where each person feels, or each segment of that care chain feels responsible for a sequestered piece of your health information, and so it's chunked out like that, and it's virtually impossible to bring it together in a timely fashion if you're bringing together lab tests and other diagnostic tests as well, let alone get it to your GP. And I think moving from a custodial to a stewardship model of how information should be governed and transmitted and collected would be an improvement.
And it is truly a culture change. Are there risks to information sharing? Always. There is risk to everything. Some people might be concerned about privacy, about cybersecurity. Those risks exist. They can be mitigated. And I think we have to start focusing a bit less on those risks, focusing on mitigation strategies, and focusing maybe a bit more on the risks of not sharing information, because those risks are real and they are materializing in our health system every day. And I think sometimes we forget about it because we get used to how the system works or does not work. So, moving from that custodial approach, to the stewardship approach is a big part of this. The other element I'd like to flag is public trust. It's incumbent upon us as, people in governments and decision makers to work together with provinces and territories, and we are doing that. We are doing exactly that to reassure those Canadians and those people who are concerned, about what's going to happen with their data, There was a recent public opinion research which showed that 60%, approximately 60% of Canadians, who participate in the research were unsure what health information was. So if you don't know what health information is, you don't know what is being shared. So how can you trust that it's going to be shared for the right reasons with the right people? So there's some work to do on public trust. There's some work to do on digital and health data literacy as well, to explain to people what happens to their information once it's out there, and to reassure them that it's going to be used for public good. Yes, by their health providers, but also in other cases for secondary use purposes, as I said.
Yeah, I'll just quickly build on that. So just to lift the mood also, the investments that have been made in the last 10, 15 years, so I would say the foundational pieces are there. When you look at, the pipes have been built, right? Now that the information needs to flow, the pipe needs to be connected, and how do you connect those pipes? So there's still some investment required, so I think the decision makers, they have to still allocate the right amount of funding to continue that journey. But also the role of, as David said, Emmanuelle said, the role of clear data stewardship and governance, the role of clear policy around, sharing the information, what does it mean by consent, what does it mean by implied consent, building some of those into those so that the information, the water could flow through those pipes. I think that's what we need to do. So David rightly said, it's not the technology problem, it's the workflow, the policy, and some of the regulations, that need to actually support it.
Yeah.
Can I just
go ahead?
say, I think with the point that Abhi and Emmanuelle are making are really important, and I think we should be a little less Canadian about it. Like the unavailability of health information in a timely fashion causes harm.
Yeah, that's where I was going to go next, right?
It causes harm physically to the safety and care of the individuals that are receiving the care. It causes harm to the clinician who's delivering the care in terms of administrative overburden and making a professional mistake, or they're just not able to save somebody's life. It can cause harm from a legal point of view if there's a security breach with respect to privacy and confidentiality. It can cause cultural harm with respect to racism in the healthcare systems. So one of the things that we're thinking about is it possible to actually develop an indicator that could measure or attribute harm to the unavailability or lack of health information coming in a timely fashion? That would probably get people's attention pretty quickly, I suspect, if we could do that. But I just want to emphasize that fact, that this is not an esoteric argument. Harm's being caused every day because of this.
Yeah,
and the argument needs to be invested with a sense of immediacy about these things, especially coming out of the pandemic.
And it's interesting because a lot of the financial information that everybody shares information on the financial, social media, everybody's information is out there. And we're just talking healthcare data to actually help provide better care, right, from that perspective. So it's really interesting you're bringing up that perspective. But obviously, in Canada, the policy makers have a role to play, right? And the administrators have a role to play, right? So what would you ideally like the policy makers to do at this point in time, right? How can they help the entire process? How can they talk about this in a manner that gets more consensus taken care of, right? There seems to be a responsibility on the policy makers in some sense.
I'm a policymaker. So
that's why I was looking at you.
Pleased to start. And instead of telling you what I'd like us to do, I'm going to tell you what we are doing, because I want to reassure everyone that there is obviously action being taken to address some of the challenges that we're discussing today. So first of all, last year the government announced a new plan called Working Together. Incidentally, because we know that this is not something we can do on our own, as federal government, or even among FPT or federal, provincial, territorial governments. We need to involve a broad range of stakeholders, the private sector, obviously, because, they do come up with those, IT solutions that allow us to share information across the system, and which are sometimes, fragmented, we know. We need to work, of course, with Indigenous partners. We need to work with, health providers, et cetera. So a range of, interlocutors. But what we have at present, so the plan was announced, working together. It includes, substantial funding, $200 billion over 10 years. This funding is flowing in part through bilateral agreements signed with every province and territory. Some of the funding can be invested. It's flexible, so provinces and territories can decide in which of the shared priorities they invest the funding. But one of those priorities is modernizing systems through health data and digital tools. So some jurisdictions, and we're very happy about this, opted to use the federal funding to do that, to modernize their health systems. But in addition to the funding, there is collaboration happening between the governments and with the various stakeholders that I was describing earlier. So we have we have 2 FPT tables, which integrate at times, stakeholders from the other groups that I was describing. We also have a group led by CIHI, actually, that is working on common indicators. And so what are we doing? We are working on those various interoperability components that we're discussing, including the tough, policy challenges, such as how do we build that public trust and that literacy? How do we move from a culture of, of custodianship to a culture of stewardship? How do we implement together the interoperability roadmap that Abhi referred to earlier, which basically describes the steps to, having pan-Canadian standards so that, we all, so that information systems can speak to one another. How do we develop common indicators, common metrics across Canada so that we can measure progress in our systems and compare? Okay, clearly Quebec is doing something wrong. They're getting these results. Is there inspiration that can be drawn from here? And to keep, members of the Canadian public informed as well of what's happening in their healthcare system. So that's, work being led by CIHI with, FPT governments. Sharing of public health data as well, big lesson from the pandemic. We know that it is absolutely critical. It improved during the pandemic because we had to make things work, but I think it would be unexcusable if we were to face the next public health event unprepared, because we know the risks now, so we have to, build our system so that next time this happens, and we know, unfortunately, history tells us there will be a next time, we know that, we have to be better prepared. So those are the various pieces that we are moving together, with all, provinces and territories at our FPT tables, working with other partners as well. And I'm sure, Abhi and Michael can speak in more detail about the interoperability roadmap as well, which is an ambitious plan. But what I want to say as well is to accelerate that work, the federal government is considering legislative options to accelerate the adoption of standards, because we want to move, at a fast pace. There is an urgency to this work. It is not, something on which we can wait another decade, as Abhi was saying. So I'll stop here. Got carried away.
David or Abhi, do you guys want to add on to?
We want to go?
Go ahead, Abhi. Oh.
Okay. Yeah, I think Emmanuelle covered pretty much the broad spectrum of what policymakers should take into consideration. But I think I would like to just summarize on 2 points. One is the recognition that yes, availability and liberating the data is absolutely an important fact. I think it should make the top priority for the policymakers. Right. So far, the dialogues has been really around, using under the disguise of privacy and security, try to actually, stop from not this happening. I think we need to recognize that if we do not do this from a policymaker standpoint, it is actually going to have a serious economical impact on the health system. We will not be able to sustain this growth and continue to fuel and fund the health system the way we are if we actually do not start thinking about bringing some efficiency into the system. So I think it has to be the number one priority in terms of the policymaker. Second is, as we are developing, I know the jurisdictions themselves, the federal government, they're all contemplating, some policy changes, or legislations or regulations. I think they have to be, one, done in a very coordinated manner, and second, it has to involve the vendor partners, the private sector into it. I think last 10, 15 years, we have done some of this to them, and we have seen the impact of that. Now, it's fragmented. I think it's including them and developing these policies, developing these legislations, with them, I think will actually deliver much faster and effective results.
I just have two observations to make, particularly on this topic coming out of the pandemic. First of all, the degree of collaboration between the provinces and the federal government, I've never seen anything as good as it is now. Regardless of what you think about what it is now, it's never been this good. And I think my observation is that if you bring all the jurisdictions into a room and talk about health information, health data priority standards, what ought we to be doing to improve the health data infrastructure in the country, it's a much easier discussion than talking about how to fund it. So I would go there first and then talk about money second, if that's possible to do. And the second thing I think we should take advantage of is everybody in this room's and the general public's relative interest and understanding of health information and health data and its importance coming out of the pandemic. I mean, people were sitting around the dinner table talking about subvariants of the virus, all right? Like you've got an engaged, thoughtful public who can actually hold politicians and governments to account for the decisions they're making about their healthcare system. And we need to take advantage of that as well.
So I wanted to kind of move on the conversation, right? Because I know in the US there's a whole concept around data blocking and how that's discouraged, or their implications around data blocking, right? Because I strongly believe in the concept of the fact that, look, for the people that don't want to share their data, let them decide not to share their data. But for the ones that want to share their data and make it available to the physicians, at least provide some sort of a mechanism to do that, right? But what are your thoughts around data blocking and actually a bigger concept around private and public sector sort of a alignment or collaboration and things like that? David, do you want to start over there? Or Abhi, I think why don't you?
Yeah, I mean, this is the number one priority that we listed in our roadmap, and this is not our priority, the three folks and our organization sitting here, but it's the priorities coming from the jurisdictions when we actually went on the road and actually consulted everyone. So, and we call it, reducing the data blocking. I think data blocking has two facets. One is intentional and the second is unintentional. So to your point, when it is intentional, I think the right usage of the policy, which should say, okay, any information, any data that is required for patient treatment or safety cannot be blocked, right? I think that's a simple answer. But for the unintentional is where, we need to work, where there is a gap, clear market guidance, clear definition of requirements, clear definition of outcomes, that is expected. I think to be fair, we have to do a better job on advising the market, on what is the expectation, what is the consistency around it, we have 13 different flavors of standards floating around, it's very difficult, for the market to actually, cope up and actually deliver on time. So that's unintentional side of thing where we need to actually take accountability and start working on more pan-Canadian type of approach. And I think once we do that, we'll see some favorable response, coming from the players, the vendor partners, and we'll start to actually see. And then I think the investments in the just like, the new investments are going into building the facilities, the hospitals, hiring more doctors, there has to be a recognition of directing some dollars into building that infrastructure on the PT side, provincial and territorial system side, to actually ingest the information. So it's not just one way. I think investments need to be there on both sides, and it needs to be recognized that, yes, this is something that we need to do at a ground root level if we need a better efficiency, 2, 3, 5 years down the road.
Anybody wants to add something to that?
This is on the question of private sector involvement.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we, notwithstanding the discussion earlier, there's an inevitable relationship between the public and private spheres in the delivery of effective quality care in this country that we need to address and just accept. Epic is going to be the health information system for the entire province of Quebec. It's one of the biggest implementations in the history of the country at this scale. It's inspiring in its scale. It's going to be complicated. It's a private sector firm out of the States. Most of the major hospital information systems in the country are American. Cerner, Oracle, Epic, Meditech. So they're an inevitable part of your life right now, every day. There's a private sector company, TELUS, that has been working on aggregating primary care EMRs for the last 20 years, 15 years. They hold a lot of that. You have to deal with them. We spent $300 billion a year last year as a country on healthcare. $100 billion of it we have no line of sight into because it's held by insurance companies or private sector deliverers. So we can't, that gives a permanently disabled view of the healthcare system in the country. We have to come to terms with them on standards, satisfy concerns about privacy and confidentiality, and make sure that the information they're gathering can be built into a comprehensive picture of healthcare quality and service in the country. So, not to mention the availability of high quality information to small startup companies that are doing innovative things with respect to healthcare technology, coming out of clinical settings in hospitals and academic health centers right across the country. So I think to have a mature view of this relationship is to have a more progressive view of how to improve healthcare in the country.
So, by the way, if you guys have questions, there are microphones over here. You could, one more question, and then I'll open it up for you all to ask questions. Make sure you ask some controversial ones. No, I'm just joking. But I wanted to, kind of move this further along, right? Let's assume that everybody's sharing data, right? We've learned this across other countries. Then the physicians are sort of, they get 15 minutes or 10 or 11 minutes with a patient, right? There's a glut of data for the providers. That the moment you open data, there's a lot of data coming through that. And so what are your thoughts in terms of planning for that, right? For that eventuality where there's going to be so much of that data coming through. How are you really going to figure out a way to help the clinicians to, help their patients out? Abhi, do you want to start with that?
Yeah, and I think if anybody has heard of AI.
I was going to bring that up.
Okay. Yes, so I think, yes, you're absolutely right. When a physician receives a transfer file of another patient from another physician, usually it's a 150-page PDF document, right? And it takes the physician at least 2-3 weeks, to go through that file before the physician can actually see the new patient. So would it not be nice now that we have the AI tools, if the data is there, if it's digitized, AI could actually create a very comprehensive summary, for the physician within seconds. And Infoway, along with our partners, we started advancing. So the concept of the patient summaries, which is pretty much well used across Europe and now in US, we brought this to Canada. Instead of creating a patient summary, a traditional way where the physician is capturing all the information or physician is receiving the information, we introduced the usage of AI scribes and AI coded terminologies into the system. So if you see during the interaction, the physician doesn't even need to touch the keyboard. During the interaction, once the interaction is over after 15 minutes, it creates a very nice coded, medically correct summary that the physician can review and actually store it or submit it. Now think about it, in a normal scenario today, they have to, after every visit, a doctor has to go back into the back room and spend 20 minutes actually documenting everything, making sure everything is fine, and then do the submissions, for their billing and everything. So for every 10-minute visit, they have to spend 20 minutes. If we can actually, using some of the technology advances, if we can actually even save 5 to 10 minutes from that backroom exercise, imagine how much time, how much capacity we're freeing up. But most importantly, we're also creating a better experience for the physician. We're making sure that the physician is also going to have more interactive time, with the patient. So these are some of the things, that we are actually including into our roadmap. People often talk about, okay, what is your AI strategy? I think to us, AI is not a separate thing on its own. AI needs to be built into how we actually do things. So that's the philosophy we have taken.
hot
Go ahead.
pursuit.
Yeah.
All right. No, thanks. So my first reaction to your question was, wouldn't that be a nice problem to have? Because let's just go back to the basics. At present, less than half of Canadians have access to some of their information, health information online.
Right.
Less than half of physicians are able to share, information online. So that's the reality of today. Now, I know that innovation sometimes happens in pockets, and it could well be that some physicians have that nice problem to have of having too much information. So I think the first thing to do, of course, which is what we're doing, is making sure that, we have consistent information, comparable information, high quality information, because when it comes to AI, as we hear sometimes, garbage in, garbage out. So having good quality of information is essential for AI to function properly and truly, help with improving healthcare for Canadians. And then the next thing is AI in health is, and modernization of our healthcare system is absolutely essential. We're not going to be able to fix it just by increasing the number of, healthcare personnel. We know this is going to take time. So we need to, look at modernization and digital tools as a way of improving our system. But as we do that, we also need to reassure people that we are looking at the ethical aspects of AI in health. And so, we are, again, working with provinces and territories to develop guiding principles,
Right.
that will essentially put a nice little framework around AI development and restate our key principles, that patients have to stay at the center, that there's going to be accountability, that we're not delegating healthcare to machines. And all of these, important aspects to, to keep patients at the center of the equation. This is also an important aspect of the FPT collaboration that's ongoing on AI and other digital tools.
Yeah. David?
Yeah, I guess I'd just question the premise you had was how can information be delivered effectively to allow for a 15-minute intervention to be as enjoyable as possible? And I think that's the very model that's driving people out of the practice of primary care and family physicians. None of the physicians I know want to be constrained in the delivery of care in 15-minute increments. It's one of the reason they're leaving, or people are choosing not to go into the profession. So I think as we think about the value that integrated health information can deliver to the clinician who's delivering the care as well as to the patient who's receiving the care, we have to keep in mind how the delivery of care models are changing, from solo GPs to team-based care, and the infrastructure that we develop to provide that information has to be fluid enough to accommodate innovation in the way care is delivered.
Awesome. Anybody have any questions? Yeah, please. Do you want to use one of the microphones somewhere? Away? You'll speak loudly. Okay.
I have a question about the state of interoperability in Quebec specifically. What is the state of it right now, and in the next 3 years, what are the milestones you expect Quebec to hit in terms of interoperability?
Anyone wants to take it?
Go
I'm
ahead,
not
Abhi.
speaking for the province of Quebec, I'll tell you that. But do you have insights, Abhi, based on the work?
The delivery, I think, so we have to appreciate the roles that we, as an organizations, we play. We're not the healthcare delivery organizations, within the jurisdictions. We are the conveners, the national conveners. We're the facilitators and setting up the standards. My understanding is without knowing the stats, I think there is whole published stats, that we have on the info websites on Inside that has the national view as well as the jurisdictional breakdown. I do know interoperability or lack of interoperability is a big issue. The reason, which is one of the reason, the decision to move to an integrated system provider like Epic to actually come and start solving that problem. It is certainly, stemming from the frustration that has actually come as part of the lack of interoperability, which means the data is not made available or the digitization is not happening at the fast pace. So that's all I would say. But I think Insights, our website, is probably the best way to actually share the tangible numbers, because we do capture a few things in terms of what percentage of citizens within each of the province, could actually access their any sort of electronic information, what percentage of healthcare providers can actually exchange electronic information amongst themselves. So there are some stats, that we have it there, but I don't have it handy right now.
Puis, est-ce que c'est... Is it okay
Yeah,
if I
yeah, go
answer
ahead,
in
go ahead,
French?
absolutely.
Okay. J'ajouterais, je pense que c'est clair qu'il y a une conscientisation, une conscience au Québec que la question des données en santé est importante. On l'a vu avec la loi qui a été passée, la loi 3 sur les renseignements de santé et de services sociaux. Donc, le Québec, je pense, comme plusieurs autres provinces et territoires canadiens, travaillent sur ces enjeux-là. Évidemment, l'avantage que peut avoir le Québec par rapport à d'autres provinces, c'est que c'est son poids démographique. Donc, ce qu'on observe à l'échelle du Canada, parfois, c'est que les plus petites juridictions ont du mal à se faire entendre quand elles interagissent, notamment avec des acteurs du secteur privé. Donc, c'est un peu plus facile quand on est une grosse juridiction, évidemment, avec aussi le poids d'une administration un peu plus développée. Donc, nous aussi, au niveau fédéral, c'est ce qu'on essaye de faire, c'est de s'assurer qu'en avançant cet agenda-là, on ne crée pas des problèmes au niveau de l'équité. Donc, que toutes les provinces et territoires sont en mesure d'avancer ensemble. Puis, je dirais que le Québec, à plusieurs égards, fait figure... en tout cas, montre le chemin à plusieurs juridictions. Donc, on observe avec beaucoup d'intérêt les avancées qui se font dans ce sens-là au Québec. Mais c'est clair qu'il demeure que partout à travers le pays, il y a un problème de fragmentation. Et puis, c'est là-dessus qu'on travaille tous ensemble. Ouais.
I don't think there's any reason to think that Quebec is taking the problem any less serious than any other province. And some of the innovations, like the creation of the new agency, the discussions they're having around primary care, are premised on precisely improvements in the area we're talking about here. And I know from our own interactions with the provincial government, they're very interested in the standards question, how to collaborate on the development of standards that will enable and facilitate the linkage of data within the province effectively. So one of the things I'd be looking for, since you asked the question, is how are they engaging with EPIC on the development of standards and adoption of standards and the implementation of that rollout? What's the plan for that so that it links primary care, acute care, and public health in the province? I'd be looking for those sort of milestones as markers as to how comprehensive their plan will be for integrating data.
Yep. So I think, thank you. I think we have a question over there. Go ahead.
Hello.
Yeah, we can hear
Ian
you.
Becker, GP from Victoria. Thank you to the panel for coming. It's been very interesting. Thank you for your time. Thank you, GP, for good, not too many dad jokes, but definitely some good flair to your moderating. I actually have two questions, so I'll start with the first one. It sort of builds off what David just said. For about 10 years now, I've been hearing about standards. Oh, we need to collaborate on standards. And when it comes to something like standards about terminology, I understand there's like 2 or 3 or 4 options, ICD this and then SNOMED that. And I'm just wondering, like, why haven't we just picked one? I'm assuming picking one would be the thing to do to all agree on a standard. So first of all, check to see if I'm right that picking one is the thing to do. And then I just don't understand why it's taking 10 years and we still haven't picked one.
Abhi, you can go first.
I saw everybody nodding their head, by the way.
No, you're absolutely right. I think if you on the other side of the table, if you see, okay, within the terminology there are two standards: SNOMED and ICD, and I would also add LOINC to it. So we've already adopted LOINC. We adopted DICOM, but between SNOMED and ICD, yes, I think we did. We probably haven't done a bullish job in saying, okay, go pick SNOMED for the primary care terminology. We haven't done that. And this is what will start to reflect in some of the market guidance, that we are providing now. Because I think we have not done our self-service by clearly communicating that these are the terminologies or standards. The second part is how those standards are implemented. Because it's one thing to say, okay, this is the standard, but how the implementers decide to implement that and take it to their own customized level. I think that's the other problem, right? Because it's one thing to say, okay, SNOMED is a standard for data terminology, but if you start to create various variations of it, and a national vendor, for example, have to now implement 10 different variations of the same SNOMED terminology standard, that's the problem here. That's the implementation. And likewise, when you go to the exchange standard, we move from HL7, V2 to V3, and now we're on FHIR. So it's easier said than done. We can say, yes, FHIR is the de facto exchange standard, and I think Infoway has taken a position saying that, okay, FHIR and Smart on FHIR are likely going to be there for the next 20 years, and if we need a proper exchange of information, we need to do that. But what about the billions of dollars of investment that have gone into V2, V3 over the last 20 years? So how do you transition? I think that's the challenge, that we're actually all grappling with. So I won't blame single person on this one, but it's a transition, we're going through it. And Canada is not alone in this. US is facing that same issue. Europe is facing the same issue. It's the transition phase, as we go to the next new exchange standard. But I agree with you. I think we need to be a lot more aggressive and clear in terms of establishing those standards. And hopefully you will see that our first communication, the market guidance document, which is going to be released in the next 4 weeks, it'll start to now clarify things, on those front. Great question.
David, you were going to say something.
Well, at the risk of becoming a pariah, I would just legislate it. Like, I would tie it to funding agreements.
Yeah.
Because there's a chauvinism in the country that goes back your career. Individual provinces or jurisdictions would adopt, bespoke standards because it had to be a made in X province or X territory solution, as opposed to taking a look at the canvas of standards that were available and starting to narrow it down so you could actually move towards interoperability. Now, the good news is there's a lot more common thinking about this now across the jurisdictions. The divisions that once were there are not nearly as sharp. The discussion we're having up here is wearing them down. I mean, the argument doesn't hold water anymore about the kind of individual chauvinistic approaches to this. But frankly, I would just tie it to funding agreements, make adoption of the standards in key areas, not across the board, but in key areas, I'd tie it to funding agreements.
Yeah, but by the way, there are data transformation mechanisms that are available to be able to really collaborate between standards. So it shouldn't be a rule that everybody follow that. Even if they didn't get to that point, there's data transformation.
Yes, and there's mapping that can be done.
Technology is available to kind of handle that. Very quick question over there, and then we'll
touched upon the question, or my question previously here. When it comes to legislation, do we feel that is a viable avenue for the Canadian market, just because the different jurisdictions or different provinces tend to run obviously as their own. So to create a common platform or a common use case, legislation might be an interesting avenue. It's done in the US on CMS mandates. So is there an opportunity for that? And do you think that's something that can be pushed either by Health Canada or the other organizations like CIHI and Health Infoway?
All right, David wanted to go first.
I'm going to be brief. So, yes,
let's be brief over
I
here.
do think there is. I think we should be approaching this challenge as a country as though health data infrastructure was a utility. It's as important as the transportation system or the electrical and power systems, and the standards are, as Abhi alluded to earlier, are about both the mechanism for transmitting the information and then the information within it. There's 2 sets of standards, and I think there are core areas that could absolutely be mandated by mutual agreement of all the jurisdictions.
Emmanuelle.
Yeah, I think you might have missed, like earlier I said very briefly that the federal government was looking at possible legislative, frameworks in that context to mandate those standards and to accelerate progress, really, because, it's all in the roadmap in a way, right? So it's really about, it's really about moving faster and making sure that, our intentions are clear. But what I want to say is what's very important to us is to go about whatever option we take, to go about it collaboratively with provinces and territories. We know that some, and not only with provinces and territories, quite frankly, with vendors, we don't want to disrupt progress. We want to accelerate it. We are reaching out to, a variety of stakeholders in that context to see what's possible to, really drive change. And, again, as Abhi said, not wait another decade or two to make this real.
Awesome. Well, we're down to our last 20 seconds. So do you guys want to use 1 or 2 sentences to describe what your vision is for the next 5 years, where you see interoperability in Canada? Emmanuelle, we'll start with you. Really brief, okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
1 or 2 sentences.
Yeah, so I would just say, let's first of all, let's stop focusing so much on the risk of data sharing, and let's start focusing on the opportunities of data sharing. And the second one is, like, again, I know it sounds like old, but collaboration. Given how our country is organized, there is no way no one can do this alone. And I will include in that the private sector. I think someone said in an earlier panel, the success of IT solutions, a key factor for the success of IT solutions will be the ability to talk to one another, and I would agree with that. So,
David, do you want to quickly go?
No, I don't. That's well said.
I would say, we'll just use the different words, but I think our vision is all same. So I think that speaks to it. It is really about, advancing and achieving the connected care, because everything else, that, to me, that is the macro vision. Everything else, starts to come and actually supports it. So it's really to advance the connected care health system.
Well, thanks a lot for being here. Very informative. I learned a lot. I think everybody else did. Now, for everybody else, right, this is going to be a collaborative exercise. If you guys follow me on LinkedIn, you know that there's always a selfie at the end of this. So we're going to be trying to do that. I've been told that everybody is able to collaborate with each other, and that's what we're going to see. So guys, can I have you over here, and can everybody get together in the middle over here? Let's see if we're going to be able to get together and do a quick selfie, all right?
it's a group
You want
hug.
to? Yeah.
Are you kidding?
Would you?
No. Can I have you maybe go down over there?
Oh,
the 3 of
you want me to go down there?
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. That'll,
Let's see.
There you go.
Sorry, yeah, actually, because I
guys
twisted
can-
my ankle not long ago, so.
all right, we're going to try, okay? Everybody
All
come
right.
on together. All the people leaving, please don't leave.
Do you want
All
us
right.
to say anything?
All right, I can
Connected
see
care?
everybody,
No.
right?
Interoperability.
Red
Yeah,
line.
no, that
Okay,
does
let's
make
say
for nice
interoperability on
Interoperability.
3. 1, 2, 3. Let's say interoperability on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Interoperability.
Let's go
Awesome.
for cheese.
Thank
Go-
you, everybody. Thanks a lot for being here. Thank you.